A young Mike Tyson.
The moment he stepped into the ring, nobody in the crowd was asking who would win. They were all asking the same question. When did Mike Tyson have a secret son? The same thick neck, the same low crouched stance as he drove forward, the same short, vicious power punches that made opponents' legs go weak. Even his face and expression looked almost exactly like a young Mike Tyson. But the truth was even more unbelievable. According to accounts of his first real sparring session, this natural-born killer did not knock anyone down. He was the one who got beaten so badly that he took a knee and broke down in tears. His name is DeAngelo Evans. He did not discover boxing until college, in his late teens. He never competed in an official amateur bout. He had no national title, no Olympic background, and no famous trainer laying out a path for him. Years later, however, he had built a terrifying professional record of 15 wins, no losses, and 14 knockouts. People remembered his face because they saw the shadow of Tyson. But the one thing Evans wanted more than anything was to use his own fists to tear that label away. He wanted the day to come when people saw that face and no longer shouted Mike Tyson. He wanted them to say one name: Evans. What makes the story even more incredible is that the man who has now brutally stopped 14 opponents in 15 professional fights began his career with one of the most humiliating beatings of his life. In his late teens, Evans was still an ordinary young athlete who had competed in wrestling, football, and track. Wrestling was the sport that stayed with him into college. It did not teach him how to punch, but it gave him a strong base, explosive power at close range, and a stubborn refusal to accept defeat. Then, one day, he met several fighters inside a boxing gym. Because he was physically strong and already had a wrestling background, he made a few cocky comments. The coach did not argue with him. He asked one simple question: if you can talk like that, are you brave enough to step in and try it? Evans agreed without hesitation. The moment he entered the ring, he discovered that boxing had nothing in common with pushing people around in the street. The men who looked less physically imposing moved faster than he did and landed with far greater accuracy. Every time Evans tried to use his strength and close the distance, they moved off to the side. Every time he raised his hands to fire back, another clean punch crashed into his face. He could not even understand where the shots were coming from. He only knew that he was being hit again and again. It did not take long for Evans to be completely humbled. He dropped to his knees and cried. When he left the gym that day, only one thought was running through his mind: this sport is not for me. But the same defeat that pushed him away was also the thing that dragged him back. Evans later admitted that he did not suddenly fall in love with boxing. He simply could not accept the feeling of being completely broken by another man. He hated losing, and he hated standing there while someone else controlled and humiliated him. He could admit that he did not know how to box. What he could not accept was staying defeated. So he returned to the gym and officially began learning. Some fighters stay because of love, dreams, or natural talent. Evans stayed at first because the loss was eating him alive. That is one of the biggest differences between him and the young Mike Tyson. Tyson was identified and developed as a prodigy while he was still a boy. Evans did not begin until his late teens. While other fighters were collecting dozens, sometimes hundreds of amateur bouts, he was still learning how to stand, how to defend himself, and how to make a punch land with real force. If Tyson looked like a boxing machine created by the gods, Evans followed a path that looked far more familiar to ordinary people. He worked during the day and trained at night, spending several years slowly grinding out his technique. He took construction jobs while trying to keep boxing alive. Other fighters gained experience through competition. Evans had to absorb punches in the gym, steal lessons during sparring, and pour the money he earned back into training. Compared with stars who had been boxing since childhood, he had started more than a decade late. Then, just as boxing began to offer him a little hope, life hit him with something more painful than any punch. He lost his mother. There were no gloves capable of blocking that kind of pain, and no referee who could rush in and stop it when he had taken enough. Evans did not constantly talk about the tragedy or wear his grief for everyone to see. He simply spent more time in the gym. A heavy bag cannot comfort anyone, but when his fists crashed into it again and again, at least the pressure trapped inside his chest finally had somewhere to go. Boxing began as therapy. Then it became a hobby. Then it became a job. Finally, it became the profession he was willing to risk everything for. In 2021, Evans entered professional boxing. He had no decorated amateur resume, no media campaign behind him, and nobody treating him like a future star. His first professional opponents were just as unknown as he was. On paper, there was no obvious reason to believe one man had a greater future than the other. Then the bell rang, and Evans revealed his true nature. He did not waste time with the cautious feeling-out process common among new professionals. He did not enjoy standing on the outside and poking with harmless punches. He lowered his body and attacked the midsection. No circles, no unnecessary movement. Every shot looked as though it had been thrown to crack a rib. From the beginning of his professional career, the most dangerous thing about Evans was never the face that resembled Tyson. It was the cruelty with which he treated an opponent's ribs like moving targets. He would use the jab to force the guard high, then suddenly dip and drive a punch into the stomach. He would pretend to attack the head, wait for the elbows to leave the body, and send a hook underneath. The head can move, it can slip, it can disappear behind a guard. The body is always there. And once Evans truly found it, the first thing his opponents usually felt was not pain. It was the sudden loss of breath. Adam Tomlinson became the first man to experience that suffering in full. From the opening bell, Tomlinson held a high guard and refused to exchange recklessly with Evans. His plan was to rely on defense and slow the pace. There was nothing wrong with the strategy. The problem was that he focused almost entirely on protecting his head.
He has really good footwork. He can take 2 steps really quick backwards, evade all the punches, and still keep his balance.
Well, when he goes forward, he kind of darts in and does that double step as well.
Yeah.
Evans did not rush. He used the jab to measure distance and immediately stepped off to the side after punching, refusing to remain on the center line for a counterattack. Tomlinson believed he had blocked the most dangerous shots. Then, in the second round, Evans suddenly dropped his level and drove a crushing punch into the body.
Boxers landed right there.
They did. Both DeAngelo Evans fighting out of the Mason Jar Saloon red corner and Adam Tomlinson fighting out of...
Tomlinson immediately fell to one knee. The referee began the count, and he barely managed to stand. But everyone watching already understood that the real difference between the two men had been exposed. That punch felt like a nail had been left underneath his ribs. From that moment forward, every time Tomlinson raised his hands to protect his head, he feared another shot to the body. Every time he tried to attack, his torso tightened on instinct. In the third round, Evans repeated the same formula. He attacked the exact same area and delivered another vicious hook.
From a couple different fighters tonight.
But he
body shot,
pivoted, and then...
Tomlinson had not been knocked unconscious by one punch, but his desire to win had already been taken away. He eventually became nothing more than a moving, heavy bag.
If you know you have to protect your stomach or you're going down,
it's going to be down here in a second.
An easier target then?
He got him. He hurt him with that sign. And they're going to call it.
With only 2 body shots, Evans destroyed his opponent's breathing, footwork, and willingness to fight back. The next few contests became brutally simple. One opponent folded in half after being caught by a short uppercut at close range. Another took a body shot, dropped to his knees, and never got back up. Evans was never the kind of fighter who wanted to slowly collect points. He preferred to lower his center of gravity, explode into range with 2 quick steps, and drive his entire body weight underneath the guard. 1 second, he was outside the opponent's punches. The next, he was pressed against the man's chest. If the opponent retreated, Evans followed. If the guard came high, he attacked the body. If the elbows dropped, his punches immediately changed direction and targeted the head. That style, more than anything else, was why people kept connecting him to Mike Tyson. It was not only the face or the compact build. It was the sudden explosion through the front door and the pressure that arrived before the punches even landed. Evans gave his opponents almost no time to think. His mind was always searching for the finish. But anyone who believed Evans was only a power puncher beating ordinary opposition was about to see the rest of his game revealed by one difficult veteran. Clay Burns had already fought more than 30 professional bouts and knew exactly how to survive. He was not a star and did not carry a glamorous ranking, but he belonged to one of the most difficult classes of opponent in boxing, the experienced survivor. Fighters like Burns have seen every kind of power and every kind of rhythm. They might not defeat the very best, but they know exactly how to make a young prospect uncomfortable. Try to finish them quickly, and they drag you into deep water. Lose your patience, and they immediately punish the mistake. Knocking out an ordinary opponent proves very little. Handling a veteran who knows how to survive through 6 full rounds is a far more serious test. This time, Evans did not chase the knockout. He raised a high guard and used the left jab to measure distance, attacking the head before switching to the body. Whenever Burns prepared to counter, Evans stepped off to the side, instead of remaining in front of him and trading wildly. Burns kept coming forward and forced Evans toward the corner several times, but Evans did not panic. He pivoted away from the center line, reclaimed the middle of the ring, and pulled the fight back into his own rhythm.
His shots. This bout's a 135-pound lightweight bout. Evans is going in with a high guard. Ooh, overhand with a...
1 round passed, and there was no knockout. Then 2 rounds. Burns was still standing. The veteran was every bit as crafty as advertised. Even after absorbing combinations, he shook his head and kept advancing. At times, he deliberately taunted Evans, trying to drag him into a reckless brawl. An earlier version of Evans might have taken the bait and desperately searched for one finishing punch. This time, he refused. He continued leading with the jab. He continued stepping off to the side. He continued building his advantage with a much higher punch output.
Play was stopped was back in 21.
Oh, there we go. Now Evans is putting on the
Planning
like
out.
I said, Clay Burns has only been stopped one time in his career. I believe. I want to see Evans tighten it up a
Calm
little.
and composed.
Burns wanted to drag the fight into the mud. Evans never surrendered control of the pace. After 6 rounds, all 3 judges scored the bout 60-54. There were no knockdowns. There was no stoppage. It was not even Evans' favorite kind of victory. But the fight mattered more than many of his knockouts, because it proved for the first time that when raw power could not solve the problem, Evans could remain disciplined and complete a full boxing match. The most dangerous knockout artist is not the man swinging for the finish every second. It is the man who has learned when to draw the blade and when to put it away. After that, the opponents became better, but the endings became short again. Giovanni Babyface Gutierrez arrived in Greensboro with a plan. Once the bell rang, several quick hooks from Evans immediately forced him into a defensive shell. The first round had not even ended before the fight was stopped.
Gutierrez is not defending himself. Is that?
Wow.
Just like that, DeAngelo Evans.
Ricardo David Ocampo's night ended even faster. Before he could fully understand the distance between them, a sudden uppercut exploded from close range and ended the contest.
Put a full stop on it.
Then came Evans's first fight in Los Angeles. It was an unfamiliar city, an unfamiliar crowd, and his first main event on a larger stage. That kind of moment can multiply the pressure on a young fighter, but Evans did not become cautious simply because he was fighting away from home. Freddie Espinoza entered with a 4-fight winning streak and enough experience to survive difficult fights. But after making it into the 4th round, he was still caught by Evans and stopped before the final bell. That performance mattered for more than the knockout. It was the first time Evans had entered a city that did not belong to him, and forced a crowd that had never heard his name to remember DeAngelo Evans. The veteran Raymond Chacon was an even tougher piece of work. By the time he faced Evans, Chacon had already logged 75 professional bouts across 13 years. Heavy punchers, veteran tricks, ugly traps, he had seen almost all of it. Against a fighter like that, reckless pressure only leads you into an ambush. Evans remained patient. Round by round, he reduced the available space. He attacked the body to slow Chacon's feet, then used punches upstairs to tear open the guard. By the 6th round, Chacon's movement had been compressed into one small section along the ropes. That was when Evans revealed the killer underneath the patience. The first punches attacked the body and forced the guard to drop. The power shots immediately shifted toward the head. Chacon was trapped against the ropes, forced to endure the storm created by the man many people were calling Little Tyson. Next came Helton Lara, a Nicaraguan fighter with 17 professional victories. He also tried to use experience to drag Evans into the later rounds. For 4 rounds, Lara survived the storm, searched for counters, and tried to make the undefeated prospect lose his composure. Then, in round 5, Evans suddenly fired an uppercut from close range. The punch rose from below Lara's line of sight. His head snapped upward, his legs disappeared underneath him, and he crashed heavily to his knees. 14 fights, 13 stoppage victories. Different styles, different plans, the same ending. They all fell beneath the wave of Evans' power punches. But the performance that truly forced the boxing world to pay attention came next. In May of 2026, Evans faced the most closely watched test of his career. César Villarraga was not a last-minute opponent brought in to lose. He had competed at the Olympic Games, had once been unbeaten as a professional, and had shared the ring with several legitimate fighters. Veterans like Villarraga understand how to disrupt rhythm, frustrate young prospects, and turn what should be an exciting fight into an ugly battle of attrition. Before the fight, plenty of people doubted Evans. They wanted to find out how much real ability belonged to a boxer who had never competed in an official amateur bout. The examination lasted less than 2 rounds.
The house. That quick right there. Like I was telling you, he didn't even set it, no jab, no nothing, Tito.
Yeah, no, just perfectly timed shot. Those are the ones you don't, those are usually the ones that people don't get up from.
Evans did not throw a long combination. There was almost no visible warning. He simply released a left hook at breathtaking speed. The moment the knuckles struck Villarraga's chin, the veteran's body went completely limp. His legs stopped responding, and the entire sequence happened so quickly that it was almost impossible to process. Villarraga may not even have known which punch had hit him by the time he regained consciousness. Evans did not roar. He did not sprint to the corner and celebrate wildly. He calmly turned away, with the mouth guard still in place until the final moment. 15 wins, no losses, 14 knockouts. The young man who had once been beaten to his knees and reduced to tears in his first real experience inside a boxing ring had now stopped 14 professional opponents before the final bell. But just as Evans appeared closer than ever to a larger stage, a new problem emerged. His march toward a championship was suddenly placed on hold. BoxRec currently lists Evans as suspended by the California State Athletic Commission through November 25, 2026. The publicly available record does not explain the exact reason, but for a 28-year-old undefeated fighter who had just delivered the most explosive knockout of his career, half a year outside the ring was no small interruption. Evans had already started boxing more than a decade behind the men who began as children. Without an official amateur resume, he had been forced to learn one professional fight at a time. Work and the pressure of ordinary life repeatedly interrupted his path. After his mother died, he did not even know where to place the pain he was carrying. Now, once again, he stands outside the door, waiting for boxing to open it. But the young man who once dropped to his knees and cried is no longer there. Boxing loves calling every sudden power puncher the next Mike Tyson. The name is famous, and the comparison is easy. Evans' compact frame, explosive entries, and short-range power certainly remind people of the young heavyweight who once terrorized an entire division. But Tyson had his own childhood, his own empire, and his own scars. Evans has his own road. He was not a championship prospect developed from childhood. He was a late starter who entered a boxing gym in his late teens, cried after his first real experience, never had an official amateur fight, and spent his days working before training at night. He did not remain in the gym because putting on gloves brought him immediate victory. The exact opposite was true. He stayed because that first defeat was something he could not swallow. His power was not simply a gift from birth. It was built piece by piece through construction work, long workdays, the silence that followed his mother's death, and every training session driven by the promise that he would never kneel like that again. So the real question has never been whether DeAngelo Evans looks like Mike Tyson. The real question is what happens when the suspension ends, when Evans walks onto a larger stage and faces truly elite opposition. Can the hands that have already stopped 14 professional fighters continue delivering the same terror? Because when that day arrives, the man standing in the center of the ring will not be anyone's secret son. He will not be a cheap replacement for a legend. People first remembered his face because of Mike Tyson. Now DeAngelo Evans intends to make the world remember his own name with his own fists. Thank you for watching Fight Epoch. We will see you in the next video.